Hello, we're back with another episode of the For the Property Investor podcast. And of course, the only man that brings us the news on this weekly news edition is Nick Bendel.
Great to be here, Owen. It's funny, it's been a week since we last saw each other, and yet it feels like just minutes.
It always does. It always does. So definitely always good to have you back because, the stories just keep on coming. And it's just something that, you keep bringing it. So, yeah, don't stop, Nick.
I have no intention of stopping. We've got some interesting stories we're going to discuss a little bit later. In the meantime, though, I'm keen to hear what you've gotten up to in the past week.
Oh, the past week, well, it's we're still growing. It's something that we're not growing in terms of areas covered, but we're definitely growing as a business. When we look at the amount of business that's coming in, Perth is still going strong. It's consistent. And then if you look in Sydney, as well as regions around Sydney, so you've got the Central Coast, Newcastle, Hunter Valley, especially the Hunter Valley area. If there are investors out there looking at wanting to stay within New South Wales and staying within sort of commutable distance of Sydney Metro, then the Hunter Valley is an area that's very popular at the moment. And it's going through a bit of a change and gentrification as well. So it's becoming very much an extension of the Newcastle Central Coast area, and as a result, an extension of Sydney as well. So, yeah.
Very nice. My week's been interesting. For those who don't know, I own a business called Hunter and Scribe, which writes content for finance and property professionals throughout Australia. Now, you've heard the saying, Owen, that when you're waiting for a bus or a taxi, eventually one arrives and then kind of three arrive. Funnily enough, something similar has happened. I mentioned recently that we'd started writing a book for a mortgage broker. This was maybe the first book we've written for a client in a year or so. And then funnily enough, we've just had two other clients sign up for books, another
Right.
mortgage broker and another builder. So we're actually working on 3 books at the moment.
Wow, I thought I'd never heard before that you had written books for clients before. I heard about this recent one for a mortgage broker, but now you're doing multiple ones. So that's great. It's good to hear. So how many books do you think you've helped to write with clients over the years?
About a dozen. Most of what we do is short form content, LinkedIn posts, blogs, email newsletters, award submissions, media releases, things like that. Every now and then we write a book. The last one we did was for a financial advisor about retirement.
Yeah.
And I've had a few discussions since then with people who were interested in a book, but for one reason or another, never ended up going ahead. I then got 3 inquiries in a short period of time and was surprised that all 3 of them eventually decided to proceed. So 2 mortgage brokers, 1 builder, 3 books.
Okay. There you go.
Well, there you go. And are you ready for our first story today?
Yeah. Let's hit it. What's in the news this week, Nick?
Our first story is smaller cities deliver bigger gains over 2 decades. Adelaide and Hobart have outpaced Sydney and Melbourne for house price growth, not property price, house price growth over the past 20 years, according to a valuation report from the Australian Property Institute. Between 2005 and 2024, Adelaide's median house price soared 175, ahead of Hobart at 172%, Sydney at 171, Brisbane at 169, and Melbourne at 169%, all ahead of the national average of 154%. Then came Canberra at 148, Perth at 123, and Darwin at 102%. All cities outperformed the 20-year inflation rate, which was 67%. So let's dive into the numbers, Owen. Price growth was almost identical in Adelaide, Hobart, Sydney, Brisbane, and Melbourne. Do you think that was a coincidence, or does it reflect the idea that investors target underpriced markets and therefore they all kind of even out over the long term?
Whether it was a coincidence or not, I guess we'll never know. But what definitely has changed in the last 3 to 5 years is the property investor, with the help of buyers agents and investment-focused buyers agents across the country, that are looking at different markets to try and find what's of good value right now. And so, yeah, that's where we've seen a lot more of the smaller capital cities, as well as the quite a few regional areas, stay on pace with the bigger capital cities. So yeah.
And are you surprised that Sydney and Melbourne didn't outperform the other cities?
Well, Sydney's coming off a very high base, and it's had very good growth over the last 10 years. So I don't think anyone in Sydney would be complaining too much. And it's a bit like comparing. um, you can compare one thing in terms of the percentage growth, but when you're coming off a much lower base in comparison, um, you're still making more of a dollar return in Sydney, because you're coming from a much higher base.
And crunching the numbers, the national median house price rose 154% over 20 years, which equates to an average annual growth rate of 4.8%. Is that 4.8% higher, lower, or about what you would have expected?
Over the whole country, it's probably about right. Um, and but if you break that down into um, the major capital cities, you'd probably be looking at more like about 7%. So yeah, it's about on par.
Well, let's move on to our next story. Many borrowers acting in haste, repenting in leisure. The quarterly Mortgage Choice Home Loan Report, which draws on a nationally representative survey of 1,000 consumers, has found that 62% of borrowers felt there might have been a better home loan option for them, and 57% wished they'd done more homework when choosing their loan. The most common mistakes borrowers made when choosing their first home loan were 18% assumed all home loans were basically the same. Again, 18% focused too much on rate. Again, 18% failed to consider how their needs might change in the future. 16% opted for big banks without considering other options. And 13% assumed that a home loan pre-approval guaranteed final approval. So, Owen, the survey found that 62% of borrowers felt there might have been a better home loan option for them. Why do you think that figure was so high?
Probably because it's correct. There's so many options out there in terms of number of lenders, number of products, different policies, that it's almost impossible to get it right. Even for professionals who do this for a living, aka mortgage brokers, it's difficult for them to be able to necessarily be getting it right 100% of the time, because there are so many factors involved. So it's the most important thing that people are looking at doing is getting into a property.
Mm.
So they need to find the right policy from the right lender, and then secondly, that'll narrow it down. So that's the first thing that they need to look at, and then the second thing they need to be looking at is then price. And the only way that they can effectively do that with any confidence is to use a mortgage broker, and a
You,
good
you
one
made
at
a good,
that.
you made a very good point about how the most important thing is buying the home. I've often made the point that an imperfect loan you do qualify for is better than a perfect loan you don't qualify for.
Correct.
Get the loan, get the property, and then you can refinance down the line if you need to.
Yes, people, especially first home buyers, they put a lot of pressure on themselves on getting the right loan when before they buy, and because they think that they're going to have this loan for the next 25, 30 years plus. And it's just like, no, don't be more concerned about just getting qualified for the loan, um, to get the property as soon as possible, because you'll save more money by buying that property as quickly as possible, rather than waiting for the perfect loan. You can always refinance the loan down the track. And even within 6 months, if you really needed to, you can refinance. That's not a problem. But it's probably more like a 3 to 4 years. Your situation might have changed and hopefully improved, and you might have had a bit of growth in the property within 3 or 4 years, and you can go back to your mortgage broker and say, hey, can we relook at this? Maybe now get a better rate or get a better structure, and look at how we can move forward. So yeah, it's just getting into the property is the most important thing.
The survey also found that 18% of borrowers assumed all home loans were basically the same. And that's actually lower than I would have expected. Does that suggest that the typical consumer now understands that there are a wide variety of lenders and loans in the market?
Yes, I'd be surprised that if people really did think that a lot of the home loans were the same. So yeah, I'm even surprised that 18% thought they were all the same. It's it's and I'm surprised that only 18% are focused too much on rate. I thought that would
Mm.
be higher. So so it shows that there's a lot more education in the marketplace, and people have a bit more understanding about what they're looking for. But yeah, there's still a segment that might not understand, and maybe they've never had any exposure to the lending markets before, and what it's all about.
Following on from that, given that there are still a significant number of borrowers who are focusing on rate and still gravitating towards the big four banks, what do brokers need to do to educate their customers?
It's really go through that fact find that they do with them, and give them an understanding at that point of what's most important to them. You know, it's if they're a first home buyer and they've been trying to save for the past 5 years, and if they're still focused on rate to get into the market, then they can say, well, we could get the cheap. If you wanted to get the cheapest rate, you would have to save up X number of more dollars as a deposit, or you would need to get more income, or whatever it might be, that's stopping them from getting that best rate. How much more time is that going to take you? So it's more about uh, getting the best rate versus what's that going to cost you in terms of time of getting into the market. So if they were able to get into the market 5 years ago by paying a higher rate, what would they have saved in terms of um, making that growth in a property that they would have bought 5 years ago, and how much better off would they be now?
Let's move on to our third and final story for today. And I'm really going to be interesting to hear your thoughts on this, Owen. This covers some of the themes that we speak about regularly on the podcast. Our final story is how to put downward pressure on property prices. Cotality's head of research, Eliza Owen, has suggested 4 things we could do to reduce demand for housing and therefore make it more affordable. 1, eliminate stamp duty. 2, implement a broad-based land tax with people who have already paid stamp duty given credits on their land tax bills. 3, reduce negative gearing, especially for people who own multiple investment properties. And 4, reduce the capital gains tax concession from 50%. So let's go through all of those, Owen.
Yep.
Let's begin with the first 2 combined. So what do you think of Eliza Owen's suggestion to eliminate stamp duty and to replace it with a broad-based land tax?
Any combination of those 2 options, I think is a good idea. Whether it's reducing stamp duty, or at least changing the percentages. We might have a 0 stamp duty for lower price properties, or a lower price median in each LGA, and then implementing that broader based land tax. And yes, giving credits back on for people with their land tax bills is a good idea. So, because what that does is it makes it easier to buy and sell, or I should say sell and buy, so that you can make those changes that you need to whether you want to downsize or upsize. If you're looking at upsizing, you've got a double income family with kids and you need a bigger house, but you need to live in that area to be able to be close to work and close to the schools and close to the childcare centres where your kids are enrolled already. But then if you haven't got those that cash to be able to put in for stamp duty, but you can afford from an income point of view the land tax, it makes it so much easier for you to upgrade to get that bigger house. And on the vice versa, for retirees who are empty nesters, they've got this huge house, but they haven't got the income to afford the upkeep on it. So they want to downsize, but to downsize, they have to spend all this money on stamp duty on their purchase. And they think, oh, well, instead of spending that $50,000 to $100,000 on stamp duty, why don't I just renovate the house? So it's but they're still living in a big, 4-bedroom house with just the 1 or 2 people there. So it will make it so much easier for people to be able to move and get into the appropriate housing that they need to. So it's I've been a fan of this policy for a while, and I think it will make a huge difference to the property market, and will even out a lot of the inconsistencies we have in the property market.
And just to clarify, you say you're in favour of a land tax. However, this would be revenue neutral. So the increase in the land tax would be matched by a corresponding decrease in stamp duty.
Oh, yes, absolutely. It's not about extra revenue raising. It'd be great if we could just eliminate stamp duty altogether without replacing it, but it's a big income source for state governments. So we need to look at replacing that somehow. And the easiest way of doing that would be with a broader based land tax. But it needs to be measured so that the higher price properties, where obviously people have higher incomes to be able to afford these properties, will need to cop the higher cost of that, and then the lower price properties for people who don't have the income and they need to live in a lower price property won't have that higher cost. So, but of course, we can't just do it for people who have already paid stamp duty. We need to give them some kind of allowance on that moving forward.
Okay, so far you're loving Eliza Owen. what do you think of one of her other suggestions, which was to reduce negative gearing, especially for people who own multiple investment properties?
Okay, well, define what multiple investment properties are. Is it 2 properties or is it 10 properties? It's yes, I don't have a problem with negative gearing because usually, we need to consider that it's only, um, it's 90% of all property investors have a maximum of 2 properties. And it's something like 78% only have 1. So, and these are the people that mostly benefit from negative gearing. So it's the nurses, it's the teachers, it's the tradesmen, it's all of these professions who are just trying to get ahead a little by having one investment property that are going to be, and it's in their personal name. They're the ones that are going to be hurt most of the time by reducing any negative gearing benefits. All these wealthy people who own, hundreds or, multiple investment properties that people keep on talking about that they think negative gearing is helping. They don't own these properties in their personal names. So negative gearing is just not relevant to them. So it's by taking it away, you're not hurting the wealthy people. You're hurting the little person who's trying to get ahead by owning one investment property. So it's I don't think there's a big benefit to anyone by reducing negative gearing. So it's it's irrelevant.
So you're not for it, but it sounds like you're not against it either. You're perhaps neutral.
Well, no, I think we should keep it. If anything, I think we should increase the benefits because it helps the little person get ahead. It it's it's the mum and dad investor that negative gearing helps. It doesn't help the wealthy people who own 10 plus properties because they don't own them in their personal name. And negative gearing benefits is uh, only there for people who own properties in their personal name. So, yeah, it's a null subject. It's irrelevant by taking it away. It won't make any difference.
So you're negative on her negative gearing proposal.
Yes, correct.
Okay, you were negative on that. You were positive on Eliza Owen's stamp duty and broad-based land tax proposals. So let's see where you are on the other thing she said, which was to reduce the capital gains tax concession from 50%. What are your thoughts on that?
It's I can see some short-term benefits for the budget bottom line, but it'll prevent it'll be a disincentive for people to invest and invest for the long term. So there'll be a lot more people focused on short-term investments. And yeah, it's we want to. It's there for a reason, which is to promote people's long-term investment in providing investment housing for people who want or need to invest. Want or need to rent where they live. So we need people who are committed to long-term investment properties. So the benefit is there. But again, this is only there for the mum and dad investor. It's not applicable to the people who own 10 plus investment properties where they don't own it in their personal name. So it's you're hurting the little guy with both of these lasts with the negative gearing taken away, as well as the capital gains tax concession taken away. You're just hurting the little guy.
Okay, let me wrap it up just with a big picture assessment. So she proposed these 4 things as a way of reducing demand for housing and therefore putting downward pressure on property prices. If we did all 4 of these things, would it indeed lead to lower demand?
No, I don't think it'll do anything for lowering demand, but it will help to free up the turnover of property, so the supply of property, make it easier for a lot more transactions to happen, so that the market will be a lot more fluid. So, especially with the stamp duty and the broad-based land tax, it'll make the market a lot more fluid, make it easier for people to move, both within their current local market, as well as being able to move to other markets, and that'll make a huge difference to helping people to be able to afford where they live a lot better.
Well, this was another really interesting chat, Owen. Always enjoy hearing your thoughts. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week.
All right, thanks, Nick, and looking forward to see what's in the news next week.